Deranged Reddit stories. Hey, have you ever wondered what's really out there in the dark? Not the things you see, tourists, seagulls, sunburned children, but the shadows in the water, the things that watch when you're not looking. I'm Jack, and tonight I have a story that will make you think twice before dipping your toes in the surf. Meet Emma, 24, broken and pissed off. She thinks she has it all. A boyfriend named Jake, a best friend named Lily, a quiet life on Myrtle Beach. Until she discovers they've been sneaking around behind her back, laughing while she plays the fool. But here's the catch. As Emma's world opens up, something else crawls out of the waves to greet her. Something with dark eyes, crooked teeth, and a hunger she knows all too well. Betrayal sucks, sure, but revenge, huh? That's when things got messy in the ocean in the same way. It started with a text. I wasn't snooping, I swear. Just borrowing Jake's phone to call mine, lost somewhere in our cluttered Myrtle Beach apartment. That's when I saw it. Lily's name, glowing on the screen, followed by a string of messages that hit me like a punch to the gut. Last night was amazing, she wrote. Can't wait to see you again. My hands shook as I scrolled, each word carving deeper into my chest. Pictures, too. His arm around her waist, her lips on his cheek, taken in some dive bar off Ocean Boulevard. They'd been sneaking around for months, right under my nose, laughing at me while I played the fool. I didn't scream or cry, not then. I just sat there on our thrift store couch, staring at the cracked wall, letting the betrayal sink in like damp rot. Jake came home later, whistling like nothing was wrong, and I didn't say a word. I couldn't. My throat felt like it was stuffed with sand. But that night, as he slept beside me, I lay awake, imagining the waves outside swallowing him whole. The ocean had always been my escape, those endless tides crashing against the shore, whispering things I couldn't quite hear. Now, though, it felt different, like it was calling me. The next day, I went to confront Lily, drove straight to her little rental off King's Highway, palms sweaty on the wheel. She opened the door, all fake smiles and tangled blonde hair, acting like we were still sisters. "Emma, hey, what's up?" she chirped, but I saw the flicker in her eyes. She knew I knew. I shoved past her into that cramped living room that smelled like lavender and lies, and that's when I heard it. A moan, low and familiar, drifting from the bedroom. Jake's voice tangled with hers. My stomach lurched. I didn't think, just bolted for the door, flung it open, and there they were, half-dressed, tangled in sheets, staring at me like deer in headlights. "Emma, wait," Jake stammered, scrambling for his jeans. But I was already gone, tears blurring the road as I sped back to the beach. The ocean roared louder that day, angrier, like it felt my rage. I stood at the water's edge, barefoot on the cold sand, letting the waves lick my ankles. That's when I saw it, a shadow under the surface, too big to be a fish, too deliberate to be driftwood. It moved closer, and I should have run, but I didn't. Something held me there, pinned me like a moth to a board. The water parted, slow and deliberate, and it rose up. Not a shark, not a man, something else. Its skin glistened like wet coal, eyes black as the deep sea, a jagged horn jutting from its forehead. Teeth sharp enough to shred bone glinted in the fading light. My heart hammered, but here's the crazy part. I wasn't scared. Not of it. I felt understood. Like it saw the storm inside me and nodded back. "You knew, didn't you?" I whispered, voice cracking. The creature didn't speak, just tilted its head, those dark eyes boring into mine. And then I remembered, a night months ago, walking this same stretch of beach, feeling watched. I'd brushed it off as paranoia, but now I knew. It had been here, warning me, and I'd been too blind to listen. Jake showed up the next evening, banging on my door, begging me to take him back. "Emma, I messed up, okay? Lily means nothing. I love you." His voice was all desperation, but it sounded hollow, like wind through a broken shell. I let him in, not because I believed him, but because I wanted him close when it happened. We walked to the beach together, him babbling apologies, me silent as the grave. The sun was bleeding into the horizon, painting the waves red when I saw it again. That shadow, circling beneath the surface. "Jake," I said, stopping at the waterline, "you ever wonder what's out there?" He frowned, confused, but before he could answer, the water exploded. The creature lunged, all teeth and fury, snatching him off the sand like he weighed nothing. His scream cut off sharp as it dragged him under, a thrash of limbs, then silence. Just the waves, lapping at my feet like nothing happened. I stood there, heart pounding, waiting for guilt to hit. It didn't. Instead, I felt free. The creature surfaced again, just its eyes above the water, watching me. I smiled, a real shaky smile, and it sank back into the dark. That was the first night I slept without nightmares, the ocean's hum cradling me like a lullaby. But freedom's got a price, doesn't it? And mine was about to come knocking. You ever stand somewhere so quiet you can hear your own heartbeat? That's what it was like after Jake vanished into the waves. Myrtle Beach stretched out before me, empty except for the wind and the water, the sun long gone, leaving the sky bruised purple. I was alone, or at least I thought I was. The air felt heavy, like it was pressing down on my shoulders, and the ocean, it wouldn't shut up. It hissed and churned like it was chewing over what just happened. I should have been freaking out, right? My boyfriend, ex-boyfriend, had just been yanked under by something with teeth like daggers. But all I felt was this weird calm, like the world had righted itself. I walked back to my apartment that night, sand still clinging to my feet, the salty tang of the sea stuck in my throat. The place felt different without Jake's mess. His sneakers by the door, his half-empty beer cans on the counter. I didn't cry, didn't even flinch when I saw his jacket slung over the couch. I just sat there in the dark, listening to the distant crash of waves through the open window, wondering if that creature was still out there, watching me. The next morning I went back to the beach. Don't ask me why. Something pulled me, like a hook lodged in my chest. The tide was low, exposing jagged rocks and clumps of seaweed that looked like drowned hair. I stood where it happened, staring at the spot where Jake's scream got swallowed. Nothing. No blood, no scraps of his shirt, just the endless roll of water. And then I saw it again. That shape gliding beneath the surface, slow and deliberate, like it was stalking prey. My breath caught, but not from fear. I knew it wouldn't hurt me. Those black eyes broke the surface, locking onto mine, and I swear they shimmered with something like approval. "Guess you took care of him, huh?" I said, voice barely above a whisper. The creature didn't answer, just stared, its jagged horns slicing through the foam. Its teeth flashed, sharp and hungry, built to tear flesh from bone. I should have been terrified, but instead I got it. That primal urge to rip something apart. I felt it too, burning in my gut ever since I saw Jake and Lily tangled up together. I grinned at it, shaky but real, and it dipped back under, leaving ripples that spread like a promise. Days passed, and I kept going back. Each time it was there, waiting, watching. We didn't talk, not really, but I felt this bond, like it was part of me, or I was part of it. I'd sit on the sand, legs crossed, staring out at the horizon, and it'd surface just close enough to feel its presence. Once I caught a glimpse of that bulbous antenna, glowing faintly under the moonlight. It was beautiful, in a twisted way, like a nightmare you can't stop dreaming. But then Lily showed up. It was late afternoon, the beach mostly empty, just me and the gulls screeching overhead. I was lost in my head, picturing Jake's last thrash against the waves when her voice cut through the haze. "Emma, what the hell are you doing out here?" I turned, and there she was, hair messy, wearing Jake's black Nike hoodie, the one he swore he'd lost. My stomach twisted. She looked pissed, arms crossed, sizing me up like she owned the place. I didn't answer right away, just stared at her, letting the hate bubble up. She stepped closer, boots crunching the sand. "Where's Jake? He's not answering me. What's going on?" Her voice had that edge, the one she used when she thought she could bully her way through anything. I smirked, couldn't help it, and her eyes narrowed. That's when she saw it. Jake's phone, half buried in the sand where I dropped it last night. Her face went pale. Is that his?" "Yeah," I said, slow and deliberate, watching her squirm. "It is." Her jaw tightened, and I could practically hear her heart thudding, questions piling up behind those wide eyes. She bit her lip, trying to play it cool, but I knew that look. Same one I had when I heard her moaning his name through that bedroom door. "Why do you have it, Emma?" she finally asked, voice cracking despite her effort. I stepped closer, savoring the way she flinched. "He was with me yesterday," I said, letting the words drip like venom. "Begged me to take him back, said you were a mistake." Lies, sure, but they hit her like a slap. Her eyes glassed over, and I kept going, twirling my hair like some smug prom queen. "He had a lot to say about you, Lily. How he loves me more. How leaving me for you was the dumbest thing he ever did." "That's not true," she snapped, but it sounded weak, like she was trying to convince herself. I laughed, low and mean, glancing over my shoulder at the waves. If she only knew what was out there, waiting. "Oh, honey," I said, turning back to her. "It's exactly what it looks like, and so much more." She lunged at me then, all claws and fury, tackling me to the sand. Her hands scratched at my face, screams tearing out of her like a wild animal. I felt the sting, the heat of her rage, but I didn't care. Part of me loved it. The world slowed, and I watched a gull circle above her head, its wings cutting through the gray sky. Then she pressed her thumbs into my eyes, and everything roared back, pain, sharp and blinding, shoving me into the dark. I grabbed her wrists, thrashing under her. "Get off!" I yelled, voice raw, but she just kept going, slamming my head into the sand. Thud, thud, thud. My skull ached, but the sand was soft. Lucky me, or I'd be dead. Instinct kicked in, and I scooped a fistful of it, smashing it into her face. She reeled back, clawing at her eyes, and I shoved her off, flipping our positions. Now I was on top, fist raised, hammering down on her cheek. She pleaded, "Stop, Emma, please." But I didn't stop, not until her face was a mess of sand and tears. And then I heard it, a voice cold as the sea breeze slicing through the chaos. "No," it hissed. My fist froze midair, hovering over her bloody nose. I blinked, chest heaving, waiting for it to come again. The air went still, like the world held its breath. My fist hung over Lily's face, sand trickling between my fingers, her whimpers fading into the crash of waves. That voice, sharp, cold, like a blade dragged across ice, echoed in my ears. No, it hissed again, and this time it wasn't just out there in the wind. It was inside me, bouncing around my skull, a chorus of whispers clawing at my brain. I dropped my hand, staggering to my feet, clutching my head as the sound swelled. "No, no, no," they chanted, a dozen voices hissing in unison, loud enough to make my teeth ache. "Stop it," I yelled, voice cracking, stumbling back from Lily's crumpled form. The pain hit then, a white-hot spike drilling into my temples, like someone was carving me open from the inside. I squeezed my eyes shut, begging it to quit, and just like that, it did. The voices faded, the ache dulled, and when I opened my eyes, the beach swam back into focus. Lily was still there, sprawled in the sand, blood dribbling from her nose, scrambling to stand. She spat out a red glob, glaring at me through swollen eyes. "You crazy bitch," she rasped, voice thick with venom. "You're gonna pay for this. When Jake's done screwing around with you, he'll come back to me. I'll make sure of it." I watched her stumble up the beach, legs wobbly, disappearing over the dunes toward King's Highway. My hands throbbed, knuckles bruised and raw, one of them etched with the faint imprint of her teeth. I rubbed it absently, turning back to the ocean. The waves had gone quiet, too quiet. No gulls, no wind, just the soft gurgle of foam against the shore. That yellow tsunami buoy bobbed out there, its bell dinging faintly, like a heartbeat in the silence. I sank to the sand, staring at the water, letting the adrenaline bleed out of me. Hours slipped by. I don't know how many. The sun kissed the horizon, turning the sea to fire, and I just sat there, replaying it all. Jake's scream as the creature took him. Lily's hands on my face, her blood on my fists. That thing in the water, my silent partner in this mess. Guilt should have hit me by now, right? But it didn't. Not until I climbed the steps to my apartment, the wood creaking under my feet, and stepped inside. The quiet hit me hard. No Jake, no Lily, just me and the shadows. That's when it started creeping in, slow and heavy, like damp creeping up a wall. I paced the living room, bare feet slapping the hardwood, my mind spinning. Jake was gone, really gone, and I'd helped make it happen. What the hell was I thinking? "He's never coming back. You'll never see him again," I'd screamed at Lily, and now those words felt like a confession carved into my skin. How long before someone noticed he was missing? His roommate up in North Myrtle Beach, his buddies at that dive bar on Ocean Boulevard. They'd start asking questions. Lily might be a mess, but even she could piece it together, especially after I'd waved his phone in her face like a damn trophy. Panic clawed up my throat. "Oh God," I whispered, voice trembling. "I killed Jake." The words tumbled out, shaky and real, and I couldn't stop them. I killed Jake. Tears stung my eyes, hot and fast, spilling down my cheeks as I sank onto the couch. I'm screwed. I'm so screwed. My hands raked through my hair, pulling at the roots. Evidence. There had to be evidence. Our texts, those late-night calls, his phone. His phone. Where was it? I'd had it on the beach, taunting Lily with it. But now... I tore through the apartment, flipping cushions, digging through drawers. Nothing. My pulse raced, a sick thudding in my chest. It was still out there on the sand, wasn't it? A neon sign screaming, I was the last one with him. I pictured some tourist finding it, turning it over to the Myrtle Beach cops, their flashlights sweeping my porch. I bolted to the sliding door, yanked it open, ready to sprint back to the beach in the dark. But I didn't make it 2 steps before I slammed into something solid, something wet and cold. I hit the floor hard, breath knocked out of me, and looked up. There it was, framed in the doorway, scales glinting under the porch light. That creature, my creature, with its black eyes and jagged grin. My gaze slid down its slick body, past the clawed hands, and froze. In one, it held Jake's phone, sand-crusted and dark. In the other, God help me, Jake's head severed clean, blood still dripping from the stump, pooling on my hardwood like spilled wine. I scrambled back, heels digging into the floor, as it stepped inside. Its feet squelched, leaving wet smears, the blood trailing behind like a snail's path. "What are you doing here?" I croaked, not scared of it, not really. But that head, those dead eyes staring at nothing, made my stomach churn. It loomed over me, silent, then stretched out a claw, offering me the phone. I took it, fingers shaking, the plastic cold against my skin. It didn't move, just watched as I clutched it, then turned, retreating back through the door. The blood looped after it, a grotesque ribbon unwinding into the night. I sat there, phone in hand, chest heaving, staring at the empty doorway. Relief flickered, but it was drowned out by the dread gnawing at me. What now? I shoved the phone in my pocket, crawled to the couch, and fumbled for the remote. The TV flickered on, some mindless noise to fill the void, anything to stop the thoughts screaming in my head. But then the screen sharpened, and my blood turned to ice. Local news, a reporter's voice cutting through the static. Headless corpse found on Grace Beach, just south of Myrtle Beach. Authorities investigating. The remote slipped from my hand, clattering to the floor. Grace Beach was a mile down the coast. Too close. Way too close. I stared at the screen, the words blurring. My pulse a frantic drumbeat. "I'm done," I whispered, the room spinning around me. "My life's over," the TV blared on, that reporter's voice slicing through the haze in my living room. Headless corpse, Grace Beach, investigation underway. Each word landed like a brick on my chest, pinning me to the couch. I fumbled for the remote, hands slick with sweat, and muted it. The silence rushed in, heavy and thick, broken only by the faint hum of the ocean through the open sliding door. Jake's phone burned a hole in my pocket, its weight pulling me down like an anchor. I'd seen that head, his head, in the creature's claw, blood dripping onto my floor, and now it was out there, washing up a mile down the coast, screaming my name to anyone who'd listen. I stood up, legs shaky, and paced the room, bare feet slapping the hardwood. My mind raced, spinning out every way this could end. Cops knocking on my door, Lily pointing fingers, Jake's buddies from that Ocean Boulevard bar piecing it together. I'd yelled it at her, hadn't I? "He's never coming back." Right there on the beach, loud enough for the gulls to hear. Stupid. So stupid. I raked my hands through my hair, tugging hard, like I could yank the panic out of my skull. What was I thinking? I muttered, voice trembling. They're gonna find out. I'm done. The room felt too small, walls creeping closer with every step. I stopped by the sliding door, staring out at the black water glittering under the moon. The waves rolled in, steady and slow, like they were mocking me. That creature, it had brought me the phone, left me with this mess. Why? To help me? To trap me? I clutched the phone tighter, its edges digging into my palm, and then I froze. Footsteps. Soft, deliberate, crunching on the porch steps outside. My heart slammed against my ribs. I spun around, half expecting blue lights flashing through the curtains, but the room stayed dark. The steps got louder. Thud, thud, thud. Slow and heavy, like something dragging itself up. I backed away from the door, breath shallow, eyes locked on the glass. A shadow stretched across the porch, tall and jagged, and then it stepped into view. The creature. Scales glinted wet in the moonlight, black eyes gleaming like oil slicks, that horn cutting the air like a blade. It didn't rush, didn't lunge, just stood there, staring, its claws flexing at its sides. "What do you want?" I croaked, voice barely a whisper. It didn't answer, just tilted its head like it was sizing me up. My gaze darted to its hands, empty now, no phone, no head, just those talons twitching like they were itching to grab something. Me, maybe. I took another step back, bumping the couch, and it moved. Slow, deliberate, crossing the threshold. Its feet hit the floor with a wet squelch, leaving dark smears behind, the salty stink of the sea filling the room. I should have run, screamed, something, but I didn't. That bond, that twisted thread between us, held me there. "You did this," I said, louder now, anger bubbling up. "You took him, and now I'm the one screwed." It stopped a few feet away, close enough that I could see the water beading on its skin, dripping onto the hardwood. Those eyes didn't blink, didn't flinch, just watched, like they could see straight through me. And then it lifted a claw, pointing out toward the ocean, slow and deliberate, like it was telling me something. I followed its gaze out past the porch to the waves, and my stomach dropped. Something bobbed out there, faint in the moonlight. A shape too big to be driftwood, too still to be alive. My breath hitched. "No," I whispered, shaking my head. "No, you can't." But it didn't care. It stepped closer, the air turning cold, and I felt it. That pull, that hook in my chest, dragging me toward the water. I stumbled out onto the porch, the creature behind me, its presence a weight pressing on my back. The beach was empty, the sand glowing pale under the moon. I hit the water line, waves lapping at my ankles, and squinted at the shape. It drifted closer, rolling with the tide, and then I saw it. Jake's body, headless, bloated, his shirt snagged on a buoy. My knees buckled, but I didn't fall. The creature was there, right behind me, its breath, or whatever it had, rattling like wet gravel. I turned, glaring into those black eyes. "Why are you doing this?" I snapped, voice raw. "You took him. Why bring him back?" It didn't move, just stared, and then the water shifted. Another shape broke the surface, smaller, faster, cutting through the waves. My heart stopped. Lily. She was out there, swimming hard, her strokes frantic, like she'd seen the body, too. "Emma!" she screamed, voice cracking over the wind. "Help me, please!" She thrashed, choking on salt water, her head dipping under and popping back up. I stood there, frozen, watching her fight. Part of me wanted to wade in, drag her out, but another part, darker, louder, pictured her sinking, her hands clawing at nothing, bubbles breaking the surface, those green eyes going dull. The creature nudged me, its claw brushing my arm, cold and slick, and I flinched. "What?" I hissed, turning to it. "You want her too?" It didn't nod, didn't speak, just pointed again, out at her, like it was my move. Lily's screams got weaker, her arms slowing, and I felt it, that same rage from before, hot and alive, pulsing in my veins. "Take her," I said, low and steady, staring at the creature. "Drown her. She deserves it." Its head tilted, eyes narrowing, and for a second I thought it'd do it. But then it turned, slow and deliberate, and started back toward the water. The antenna glowed faintly, dipping under the waves, and it was gone, leaving me there, alone with her fading cries. I watched her struggle, chest tight, waiting for the water to claim her. But it didn't. She made it to the shallows, coughing and crawling onto the sand, collapsing a dozen yards away. I cursed under my breath, fists clenched, the night swallowing my scream. The waves hissed against the shore, cold and restless, as Lily dragged herself out of the water. She collapsed onto the sand, coughing up salt water, her body a shivering heap under the moonlight. I stood there, fists balled tight, watching her claw at the beach like a half-drowned rat. The creature was gone, slipped back into the deep, leaving me with nothing but the wind and her ragged gasps. I told it to take her, to pull her under like it did Jake, but it didn't listen. It left her there, alive, staring at me with those wide, wet eyes. "Emma," she croaked, voice hoarse, pushing herself up on trembling arms. "What the hell's wrong with you?" She wiped her mouth, sand sticking to her face, Jake's hoodie clinging to her like a shroud. I didn't move, didn't answer, just glared, feeling the hate twist inside me, sharp as a knife. She staggered to her feet, swaying, and pointed a shaky finger. "Where's Jake?" "What did you do?" Her voice cracked, loud enough to bounce off the dunes, and I saw it then. The glint of fear behind her anger. I stepped closer, slow and deliberate, the sand crunching under my boots. "You really want to know?" I said, voice low, letting it sink in. She froze, eyes darting to Jake's phone still bulging in my pocket, then back to my face. Her breath hitched and I smirked, leaning in. "He's out there, Lily. What's left of him, anyway?" I nodded toward the waves where his body had bobbed minutes ago, now lost to the tide. Her face crumpled, confusion turning to horror, and I kept going, words spilling out like venom. "He came crawling back to me yesterday, begged me to forgive him, said you were nothing." "That's a lie," she snapped, but it came out weak, her hands clutching her arms like she could hold herself together. I laughed, sharp and mean, twirling a strand of hair around my finger. "Oh, he had plenty to say about you, how leaving me for you was a mistake, how he loved me more." I stepped closer, close enough to smell the sea on her, and her eyes welled up, tears cutting tracks through the sand on her cheeks. "You're full of it," she whispered, but she was shaking now, doubt creeping in. I grinned, wide and wicked, savoring the way she broke. "Believe what you want," I said, shrugging, "but he's been real quiet since yesterday." I glanced over my shoulder at the water, dark and endless, and let the silence stretch. She followed my gaze, then lunged, fast, feral, tackling me to the ground. Her hands clawed at my face, nails raking my skin, a scream ripping out of her that sounded more animal than human. "You bitch," she shrieked, no words, just rage, and I felt the sting, the heat of her fury burning into me. Sand flew as we rolled, her on top, me thrashing beneath. She pressed her thumbs into my eyes, hard, and the world went black, pain exploding behind my lids. I grabbed her wrists, twisting, yelling, "Get off me!" But she wouldn't stop, slammed my head into the sand, thud after thud, each hit rattling my skull. It hurt, God, it hurt, but the soft ground kept me alive. I clawed back, scooping sand and smashing it into her face, blinding her long enough to shove her off. She hit the ground with a grunt, and I flipped us, pinning her down, my fist crashing into her cheek. It came again. No. Louder, deeper, drilling into my head like a spike. I dropped my hand, clutching my temples as the pain flared, a scream trapped in my throat. The voices multiplied, hissing in chorus. No, 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 bouncing inside my skull until I thought it'd crack. Stop it, stop, I begged, staggering to my feet, hunched over like a wounded animal. The pain eased, slow and reluctant, leaving me dizzy, the beach tilting under me. Lily lay there, bloody and still, spitting red into the sand as she tried to crawl away. You're insane, she rasped, voice thick, dragging herself up. You'll get what's coming. Jake'll come for me. You'll see. She wobbled off, disappearing over the dunes, and I let her go, too wrecked to chase. My hands throbbed, one knuckle gash deep, the mark of her teeth etched into my skin. I rubbed it, turning back to the ocean. The waves were quiet now, no sign of that creature, just the buoy's faint ding cutting the night. I sank to the sand, staring out, letting the guilt creep in, slow and heavy. Hours passed, the sky bruising purple, and I didn't move. The fight replayed in my head, Lily's blood, Jake's head, that thing in the water. I wasn't this person, was I? Not violent, not a killer. But here I was, tangled in it, maybe an accomplice to murder. I'd all but confessed to Lily, and now she was out there, bruised and pissed, ready to talk. How long before the cops showed up? My chest tightened, breath shallow, and I whispered it, soft and broken. Jake's dead. The words hung there, real now, and the tears came, hot, fast, spilling down my face. I killed him. I stood, brushing sand off my jeans, and trudged back to the apartment. The stairs groaned under me, each step heavier than the last. Inside, the quiet hit hard, and I paced again, muttering to myself, I'm screwed. Someone's gonna ask where he went. His roommate, Lily, his job. I'm done. My hands shook, the phone in my pocket a ticking bomb. I had to find it, had to destroy it. But it was already there, wasn't it? Safe in my jeans, waiting to bury me. The apartment felt like a tomb, walls pressing in as I paced, Jake's phone a cold lump in my pocket. My hands wouldn't stop shaking, knuckles still raw from Lily's face, her blood dried into the creases of my skin. I kept hearing her voice. You'll get what's coming, looping in my head, sharp and accusing. The TV flickered in the corner, muted, but I didn't need sound to know what it was saying. That headless corpse on Grace Beach, a mile south of here, it was Jake. And every second I stood there, the noose tightened. I had to move, had to think, but my feet just carried me in circles, the hardwood creaking under me like it was groaning in disgust. I'm screwed, I muttered, voice cracking. So screwed. Who'd start asking questions? His roommate up in North Myrtle Beach, wondering why Jake hadn't stumbled home drunk. His boss at that crab shack off Highway 17, pissed he'd missed a shift. Lily, bruised and vengeful, running her mouth to anyone who'd listen. I'd handed her the dots to connect. His phone, my words, the fight. My chest squeezed tight, breath coming in shallow gasps. Evidence. There had to be evidence. Texts I'd sent him, calls I'd made, that damn phone sitting on me like a confession. I stopped pacing, hands gripping the edge of the couch, staring at the bulge in my jeans. The phone. I'd had it on the beach, taunting Lily, but the creature brought it back. Why? To save me? To ruin me? I yanked it out, fingers trembling, the screen dark and scratched, sand still clinging to the edges. It was a lifeline and a death sentence, all in one. I had to get rid of it, smash it, toss it into the ocean, something. I bolted for the sliding door, shoving it open, the cold night air hitting me like a slap. I'd run back to the beach, hurl it into the waves, let the tide bury it. But I didn't make it. 2 steps out, I crashed into something hard, wet, unyielding. I stumbled back, hitting the floor with a thud, breath knocked out of me. My eyes snapped up, and there it was, the creature filling the doorway, scales glistening under the porch light like black glass. Its horn jutted sharp against the night, those bottomless eyes locked on me, unblinking. My heart hammered, but I wasn't scared. Not of it. Not anymore. It stepped inside, claws clicking, feet squelching on the wood, trailing that salty reek of the deep. "What are you doing here?" I rasped, pushing myself up, voice steady despite the shake in my hands. It didn't answer, just stared, head tilting slow like it was peeling me apart layer by layer. Then it raised a claw and my stomach lurched. Jake's phone dangled there. No, wait, I had it. I glanced down, still clutching it tight. My head spun, but then I saw the other claw, and bile rose in my throat. Jake's head, pale and bloated, hung from its grip, blood dripping slow and thick, splattering onto the floor in dark little pools. I crawled back, heels scraping, the room tilting around me. "No, why?" I choked out, staring at those dead eyes, his mouth slack like he'd tried to scream one last time. The creature loomed closer, the blood trail snaking after it, and thrust the phone toward me. My phone, not the one it had brought before. I took it, hands shaking so bad I nearly dropped it, the plastic slick with seawater. It watched me grip it, then turned, retreating back out the door, the head swinging like a lantern as it went. The blood looped after it, a grotesque smear vanishing into the night. I sat there, frozen, clutching the phone, chest heaving. The TV flickered, casting shadows across the walls, and I fumbled for the remote, desperate for noise, anything to drown out the silence. The screen sharpened and my blood turned to ice. Local news again, that same reporter, her voice cutting through like a knife. Headless corpse found on Grace Beach, just south of Myrtle Beach. Authorities urging anyone with information to come forward. The ticker scrolled, relentless, each word a hammer on my skull. I dropped the remote, hands over my face, a sob clawing up my throat. "My life's over," I whispered, the words barely audible over the ocean's hum outside. Over. It was over. They'd find me, link me, lock me away. Or worse, Lily would come back, finish what she started. I rocked back, tears burning, the phone slipping to the floor with a dull thud. That creature. It had tied me to this, left me dangling, and now the tide was rolling in, ready to swallow me whole. I stood, slow and unsteady, wiping my face with the back of my hand. The beach stretched out beyond the porch, dark and endless, calling me back. I stepped outside, the wind biting my skin, and stared at the waves. They churned, restless, hiding that thing I'd trusted, the thing that had undone me. My feet carried me down the steps, onto the sand, the cold sinking into my bones. I stopped at the waterline, staring out, waiting. For what, I didn't know. A sign, a sound, something to tell me what came next. The buoy dinged out there, faint and lonely, and I sank to my knees, the wet sand soaking through my jeans. "What do?" I whispered, voice lost to the wind. The ocean didn't answer, just rolled on, dark and deep, keeping its secrets. But I felt it watching, waiting, and I knew this wasn't the end. Not yet. And that's Emma's story. Myrtle Beach may look like paradise, but to her it's a secret graveyard, and the ocean, it's still watching, waiting for the next soul to claim it. What will you do? Fight back or let the waves wash it all away? That's the kind of bizarre story we're going to explore here, and I'm just getting started. I'm Jack, and I'm chasing 1,000 subscribers to keep these nightmares going. If this makes you uncomfortable, hit that like button. Let me know how it works. Share it with your good-for-you scary friends. They need to see this.